Okay, good morning, everyone. I learned something new yesterday, and I thought you guys might find it interesting as well. I learned that His Holiness, the Dalai Lama in Tibet, can pronounce a special type of forgiveness for country musicians. No, I'm not kidding. It's called the Dolly Pardon. I liked it. I liked that a lot. I thought it was awfully cute. I told poor Luke back there, who was our impromptu usher, I told him, and his eyes rolled so far out of his head, I think he had to go pick them up somewhere else. Because, you know what, I wanted to start light. Because these last few Sundays have been tough. Some lady, I don't know who she is, but she's been stirring things up for people, and it's been kind of difficult for some, or so I'm told, so I wanted to start things out light. Wanted to avoid adding any weight to the load that lady got you thinking about. In fact, today's entire service has been designed to take a break from the deep digging, from the comforting reading from the book of Psalms that everybody knows and loves, to the music we've sung by the Beatles and Sinatra. I wanted us all to remember that we come here to this sacred space not only to learn how to reshape our lives into experiences of joy, but also to feel inspired and hopeful, to feel closer to Spirit and each other. Because I get how our recent talks on forgiveness could be tough to think through. There's a lot of hurt and anger inside, and here I am asking you to poke at it a little bit so it wakes up and you can tell it to get out of here, right? But see, that's not what I was hoping would happen. I mean, yes, I wanted you to move all of that old, already past, not here anymore pain out of you. But I didn't want you to go jabbing your finger all around in it and reminding yourself of all the feelings you once had about it all back then. Okay, and to my counselor friends out there, and I know there's a couple here and there's a few online, and I know I'm going to hear from the one online for sure. I apologize if I sound ignorant here, but I have never understood why people seem intent to spend their time in therapy re-feeling pain. Re-feeling the stuff that sent their life off the rails in some way. I get sounding it all out again to figure out some clarity, but playing that pain track over and over again has never seemed really productive to me. It's always seemed like a really rough method of desensitization, right? You just relive it over and over again until you've felt all the feelings so many times that you can't feel them anymore. The way I've always looked at it is, I already hurt when it happened. I don't need to do that again. I need to gain clarity. I need to figure out why it hurt so I can find peace in and with it. Take, for instance, everyone over here in the music department. Okay, I am deeply grateful for these people, and I tell them really frequently, and it's for a long, long list of reasons, but one important reason is that they stand there and smile while I use them to sort my thoughts out. I just babble. I babble out loud and often in circles until I find clarity about whatever I'm focused on, all by my lonesome, because they usually don't contribute much. I just keep going until I figure it out. And they stand there and they smile. And they don't even roll their eyes at me anymore. And I'm not counting that guy up there in the sound booth, because he does it all the time. It usually seems like they're laughing with me. But, if they're not, don't tell me. I prefer to see it that way. We talked about choosing how we see things, right? That takes me back to my point. The reason that I had hoped we'd all be able to just identify the unresolved and unforgiven flotsam and jetsam that's in our past lives, the reason I thought we could poof it away with that magic wand of choosing gratitude is because we did all the prep work. We talked everything through until we gained the clarity to comfortably settle into the present moment. The moment where none of that hurt and pain and anger are anymore. The moment where that remorse doesn't exist anymore. And we also stopped judging everything around us. So we don't have those opinions that led us to holding on to anger about someone else anymore, right? We stopped judging things and putting them into those columns on that list of rights and wrongs that we've been carrying around with us, right? And we pulled our ego apart. We finally realized that the part of us that hurts when we think of those past unforgivens, that part is the very same part that's been actively hurting us. That part of us that feels the pain is the very same that painstakingly holds on to and therefore continues to cause it. And that part didn't serve us, so we let it go. I mean, I was there when we did all that, right? Were you? Yeah. I'm pretty sure I didn't imagine all of it. And in my mind, all of that previous work meant that we could blow the baggage of the past away easily, like dandelion seeds in the wind. But that has not been the case, I'm told. It seems like the moment we were asked to look at those areas of our lives which need some forgiving, a lot of us looked back in the past to find them and then pulled up a comfy chair and we decided to stay in the past. And it seems like some of us put a great big sharp pin in that chair so we could hurt as much as possible while we sat there in the long ago refeeling, which would logically bring us right back around to learning how to stay in the present again. And to borrow that shampoo analogy from last week, we would rinse and repeat the focus of all of these talks until by the time we got back around to forgiveness again, we don't look backward and stay there. And if this experience is any indication, there could be a whole lot of shampoo going down that drain before we can get to that point, right? So when the best laid plans of mice and men fail, or in this case, the best laid plan in my little head, the logical conclusion is to turn to a bear again. Remember way back in June when we entered into the now then? Let's look at then now. I mean, let's go back to our very wise bear, Pooh, again through the eyes of Benjamin Hoff's The Tao of Pooh. The stage is set for us on the very first page of the book, upon which the title reads, The How of Pooh. He says, let's imagine that we have walked down a narrow street in a large Chinese city and have found a small shop that sells scrolls painted in a classic manner. We go inside and ask to be shown something allegorical, something humorous perhaps, but with some sort of timeless meaning. The shopkeeper smiles. I have just the thing, he tells us, a copy of the Vinegar Tasters. He leads us to a large table and unrolls the scroll, placing it down for us to examine. Excuse me, I must attend to something for a moment, he says, and goes into the back of the shop, leaving us alone with the painting. Although we can see that this is a fairly recent version, we know that the original was painted long ago. Just when is uncertain, but by now the theme of the painting is well known. We see three men standing around a vat of vinegar. Each has dipped his finger into the vinegar and tasted it. The expression on each man's face shows his individual reaction. Since the painting is allegorical, and yes, y'all at home, I'm pointing because they see the painting, you have to Google it. See what happens when you get sick and miss church? So, since the painting is allegorical, the painting you're finding online, we are to understand that these are no ordinary vinegar tasters, but are instead representatives of the three teachings of China, and that the vinegar they are sampling represents the essence of life. The three masters are Kung Fu Tzu, also known as Confucius, Buddha, and Lao Tzu, author of the oldest existing book of Taoism. The first has a sour look on his face. The second wears a bitter expression, but the third man is smiling. To Kung Fu Tzu, life seemed rather sour. He believed that the present was out of step with the past, and that the government of man on earth was out of harmony with the way of heaven, the government of the universe. Therefore, he emphasized reverence for ancestors as well as for the ancient rituals and ceremonies in which the emperor, as the son of heaven, acted as intermediary between limitless heaven and limited earth. Under Confucianism, the use of precisely measured court music, prescribed steps, actions, and phrases all added up to an extremely complex system of rituals, each used for a particular purpose at a particular time. A saying was recorded about Kung Fu Tzu: if a mat was not straight, the master would not sit. This ought to give an indication of the extent to which things were carried out under Confucianism. Now, to Buddha, the second figure in the painting, life on earth was bitter, filled with attachments and desires that led to suffering. The world was seen as a set of traps, a generator of illusions, a revolving wheel of pain for all creatures. In order to find peace, the Buddhists considered it necessary to transcend the world of dust and reach nirvana, literally a state of no wind. Although the essentially optimistic attitude of the Chinese altered Buddhism considerably after it was brought in from its native India, the devout Buddhist often saw the way to nirvana interrupted all the same by the bitter wind of everyday experience. To Lao Tzu, the harmony that naturally existed between heaven and earth from the very beginning could be found by anyone at any time, but not by following the rules of the Confucianists. As he stated in his Tao Te Ching, the Tao Virtue book, earth was in essence a reflection of heaven, run by the same laws, not by the laws of man. These laws affected not only the spinning of distant planets, but the activities of the birds in the forest and the fish in the sea. According to Lao Tzu, the more man interfered with the natural balance produced and governed by the universal laws, the further away the harmony retreated into the distance. The more forcing, the more trouble. Whether heavy or light or wet or dry, fast or slow, everything had its own nature already within it, which could not be violated without causing difficulties. When abstract and arbitrary rules were imposed from the outside, struggle was inevitable. Only then did life become sour. To Lao Tzu, The world was not a setter of traps, but a teacher of valuable lessons. Its lessons needed to be learned just as its laws needed to be followed. Then all would go well. Rather than turn away from the world of dust, Lao Tzu advised others to join the dust of the world. What he saw operating behind everything in heaven and earth, he called the Tao, meaning the way, which I thought was interesting because Jesus is known as the way shower. And here is this man, an estimated 500 to 800 years before him, naming his method the way. Fascinating, isn't it? We'll come back to that. A basic principle of Lao Tzu's teaching was that this way of the universe could not be adequately described in words, and that it would be insulting both to its unlimited power and to the intelligent human mind to attempt to do so. Still, its nature could be understood, and those who cared most about it and the life from which it was inseparable understood it best. But what does that have to do with vinegar? Asks Pooh. I thought I'd explained that, I said. Oh, I don't think so, said Pooh. Well, then I'll explain it now. Oh, that's good, said Pooh. In the painting, why is Lao Tzu smiling? After all, that vinegar that represents life must certainly have an unpleasant taste, as the expressions on the other two men indicate. But through working in harmony with life's circumstances, Taoist understanding changes what others may perceive as negative into something positive. From the Taoist point of view, sourness and bitterness come from the interfering and unappreciative mind. Remember that. Life itself, when understood and utilized for what it is sweet. That is the message of the Vinegar Tasters. So Benjamin Hoff put into words a concept that I have been trying to clumsily impart. God is good all the time. And the bits within our life which bring bitterness, sometimes so much bitterness that it feels like we'll never get the taste of it out of our mouth, they're also good. Everything is there to bring us to our greatest good, even when it feels bad. I was recently told that my saying such things as that can sound kind of like dogma. And that got me thinking. Let's look to Oxford Languages for some clarity on that idea. Because according to them, dogma is a noun that means a belief or set of beliefs that are held by a group of organizations and that others are expected to accept without argument. In Christianity, the term signifies a religious truth established by divine revelation and defined by the church. In capital letters, no less, it said this, the church. Okay, I will admit that I have heard other speakers from myriad faith traditions talk about strikingly similar concepts to the ones that I'm teaching. So yes, others are saying the same thing. And many of those others are saying them because someone told them it's true and they're believing unquestioningly and inarguably. But the thing is, the things I'm saying up here, unless I quote from a book or teacher, are my own beliefs. They're based on my own experience. And the fact that my experience and resulting beliefs are found in the teachings of a great many spiritual texts, it's a beautiful gift that I've adored exploring. Although I'll admit, I've heard the sentiments that everything happens for a reason and that it's all in God's hands throughout my life, I can honestly say that hearing those things out of the mouths of others didn't do anything to shape my belief. Perhaps it opened my eyes to the possibility of those things being true, but it did not make them true for me in my mind and heart. If you know me at all, you have probably noticed that I do very little of what I should do, and I am not particularly concerned with the court of opinion. You should also know that I love a good conversation about matters of faith, and I get very, very excited when a conversation leads to a shift or expansion in my own perception. And I have no reservations about saying that I disagree, as folks in the Science of Mind group can confirm, because I've done quite a bit of that. Was I always this way? No. Absolutely not. I was very insecure. I was an insecure, frightened child, teen, and young woman, and I conformed. And I tried to fit in every imaginable way, but when it came to faith, I wasn't going to believe anything anyone told me. My dad will be moving his head pretty vigorously in a moment. Dad, when I was a kid, was it easy to get me to do something if I didn't want to? No, not at all. I was incredibly stubborn. No one was going to tell me what to do, and no one could tell me what to believe. There had to be evidence to support it. I tested the things I was told. I sought to prove or disprove, and then I found the teachings which paralleled my experience. And that's why I do what I do now. I proved God in my life. I proved all the good all the time. I proved that I'm right to trust Spirit to guide me. And then I found other teachers whose writings echoed my experience. And what's really, really cool is that I found those echoes throughout all the faiths known to humankind. So I can stand here and say that I know with a capital K in all capital letters that everything happens for a reason. And that reason is always a movement toward good. I can't tell you how or why or when that good will be realized, but I know it's true. I know it not by anything found in a book or on a dusty old scroll, but by looking closely at the threads which have woven the tapestry of my life. I'm not talking about an actual tapestry. This has not become a talk on textiles. I am talking about metaphoric threads. I've looked at all the hurty stuff in my life. And y'all, I know I share some pretty big personal experiences up here, but I only share the ones that are appropriate for a mixed listening audience. I am not going to dig into the big stuff up here. Not only because a lot of it is inappropriate for all ears to hear, but also because, A, I don't want to traumatize others with the stuff that tried to traumatize me, and more importantly, B, y'all don't want to see me cry for real, for real. You don't. I have 2 cry settings. Only 2. There's nothing in the middle. I have choked up and ugly cry. That's all I got. Either it's a little choked up or I'm here. And I don't even like to see me cry. So I'm not going to do that to any of you, or it's a whole other lesson in getting over trauma that we're going to have to deal with. But I have looked at my hardest experiences, and I have traced that line to something good, which wouldn't have come if I hadn't experienced each one of those things. So as far as I've been able to tell, every event that happens comes from somewhere in my past or present in my life. And the outcome of every event that happens is directly tied to something further down the line. Something which, if it were to happen today, we couldn't even begin to guess where it would lead us. If we take a line of thread and look back on our lives, tie the events to their causes and outcomes, and ultimately to where the great reveal happens, we can gain that clarity. And that clarity is what allows us to forgive anything at all, if we choose to. Because we're able to see how the bad stuff was necessary. As a simple example, I can see today that when the dot-com industry took an abrupt nosedive into the ground in the late 90s, y'all remember that, right? That did not go. You young folks, you may not. Let me tell you, it was not fun. It was not pretty for anybody. I lost my job. I got the call about the layoff after landing in New York for a trade show. Mind you, they lost my luggage that day too. So not only had I landed, but I'd waited in the airport for 3+ hours, never got my luggage, got to the hotel and got the phone call. It was not a great day for me. So I lost my actual income as well as a whole lot of potential money in the form of stocks. And I had to pack up and move. And it was a good thing. It led me here. I was only a few weeks into nursing my bruised ego from all of that job chaos when I volunteered to help out at a fundraiser here. And the light quite literally hit a certain tall, handsome person I married in such a way that I noticed how adorable he is. And we've been together ever since. Now that's an easy one to figure out. That's an easy thread to tie, right? But what if I'd never taken the time to examine the threads and see how it's all tied together? I might still be longing for that sky-high salary, for that waterfront house and the travel opportunities. I had all of those things. I might not be able to stop grieving the loss of those. Or maybe I'd still be seething with anger at our CEO for telling us literally right before I got on that plane to New York that everything was going great. Everything looked good for our future. Yes, he said that. And then I went to the airport. Okay? I could still be angry about that. Or I could be angry at our investors for pulling out. Or I could be filled with anger at the news media for giving the investors the idea that they should pull out. Or anger at any number of other players on that field. I could easily still be trapped in all of that chaos. So trapped that the chaos was renamed trauma. And if I had done that, I'd probably be sitting somewhere neck deep in an Eeyore attitude, listening to someone wiser than me as they try to teach me how to forgive all of that trauma that I've been allowing to hold me back and down. What is an Eeyore attitude? Benjamin Hoff says on page 16, it's the thing that gets in the way of things like wisdom and happiness and pretty much prevents any sort of real accomplishment in life. Eeyore, the old gray donkey, stood by the side of the stream and looked at himself in the water. Pathetic, he said. That's what it is. Pathetic. He turned and walked slowly down the stream for 20 yards, splashed across it and walked slowly back to the other side. Then he looked at himself in the water again. As I thought, he said, no better from this side, but nobody minds, nobody cares. Pathetic. That's what it is. There was a crackling noise in the bracken behind him, and out came Pooh. Good morning, Eeyore, said Pooh. Good morning, Pooh Bear, said Eeyore gloomily. If it is a good morning, he said. Which I doubt, said he. Why, what's the matter? Oh, nothing, Pooh Bear, nothing. We can't all, and some of us don't. That's all there is to it. It's not that the Eeyore attitude is necessarily without a certain sense of humor, but the Eeyore attitude can't move past itself. Eeyore sees the problem, and he shifts, and he sees the same problem the same way, and so he turns a bit, and he still sees the same problem the same way. The problem is the problem. Many of us, without even being aware of it, refuse to stop seeing the problem. The thing is a thing. The event, the person, the circumstance, that thing. If you call it trauma, it's trauma. If you say you can't forgive it, then you won't. If you hold that event, whatever the focus of your forgiveness work is, if you hold it up to a light and you hover a magnifying lens over it to really, really get a good look at it, it'll look the same, only bigger. I've had several private conversations with several people over the course of the last week, all of whom are struggling to find their way out of hurt and pain and fear and anger so that they can relax into forgiveness. They keep looking for a way to make it all less ugly, to make it make sense, and they weren't having any luck finding it on their own. And in all of those conversations, I found that the key to beginning to release that past injury is gratitude. And when I was able to speak words that confirmed the good of their present out of the pain of their past, I literally got to see those people relax. I got to see them smile. They all settled into comfort a little because I drew a line for them. I tied that pain to something beautiful that they would never have experienced had life taken them in another direction. The things I pointed out, they weren't huge hidden revelations that needed the insight of my mind to point out. They just weren't yet able to see the thread tying that painful past to the precious present. Once I pointed that one thread out to them, they became able to easily connect others. Perhaps from the angle you've been looking at things, you can't see how any of it led to something good, and that's okay for now. But can you find something in this time of your life for which you are grateful? Something which might not be there if you hadn't gotten to here on the path that brought you. If you hadn't endured the hurt back then, would you have recognized and appreciated the love or joy or beauty of something that you have now? Don't look at the painful details in hopes to find other details just yet. You've been doing that all on your own for far too long. Look at the journey. Pick up your threads and start tying things together. You have all the power. Prove the principle. Don't take my word for it. I wouldn't. Seek evidence of good and you will find it. Perhaps slowly at first. But as you get the hang of it, once you gain the clarity of your shifted perspective of gratitude, it will flood in. It'll flood in so abundantly that you may forget there ever was anything to forgive. And once you've proven that to yourself, keep going. Prove that God is. Prove that the God which is working is there for you and for everyone else. Prove that love is behind the power. It is all that is. Let me back right up and say that sentence again, because that makes zero sense. Okay, that didn't happen. Let me start over, because this is important, right? Because you have to, listen closely, prove that love is the power behind everything. Have you ever accomplished anything positive out of anger? Ever accomplished anything positive out of rage? Ever accomplished anything wonderful out of revenge? No. You accomplish all the wonderful things through love. Prove that joy is in every now. no matter how bitter and sour it may appear. Then forgive the vinegar for its unpleasant flavor and thank the universe for giving you a taste. Thank you.